meeting. He remembers this as a financial health check, but Lloyd's TSB disputes this.
We received a telephone call inviting us along to the bank for a health check, which seemed a good idea.
When you're conducting a health check, you will look at areas where that person doesn't have perhaps one of the bank's products. They don't have a credit card, they don't have a loan, and in most cases they probably don't need it. But if they don't have it, you're going to try and sell it to them.
Robert and Evelyn left the bank happy. They had a restructured mortgage deal, and within a few months Robert had a platinum card with a £6,000 credit limit.
It was a good feeling to know that you'd got this sort of period of austerity behind you. Your finances were on track, and they were so on track that you were creditworthy, not just for a few £100s, but for a few £1,000s. And that made me feel very good.
This week, the credit card celebrated its 40th birthday. Today, there are over 1,000 different cards available. And what you may not realise is that 70% of them are owned by the big 5 high street banks.
At any one time, a single credit card will have up to 100 different interest rates for purchases, introductory offers and cash. Armed with his new platinum card, Robert started to spend.
If, for example, I went to the garage, whereas before I would have had perhaps 10 or 20 pounds in my wallet to use for petrol, I would fill up with the credit card, and I would think, that was a sensible thing to do. I'll pay it off at the end of the month. But of course I didn't. Before long, you get to the stage where suddenly you haven't got any credit left on your card, and at that point, or thereabouts, the bank would step in and invite you to increase your credit limit.
Unsolicited increases in your credit limit can take place up to twice a year. In some cases, your credit limit could literally double in the space of 2 years. The customer doesn't really have a say in it. The higher your credit limit, the more you're likely to spend.
Robert started with £6,000 of credit on his platinum card. Within 2 years, the bank bumped up that figure to £11,000. Then Lloyd's TSB gave Evelyn a platinum card. Her credit limit, £4,500. Robert was tempted by other offers that came through the letterbox.
You know what it is?
Oh yeah. Overall cost for comparison, 7.8% APR. It seemed to indicate to us that we were a much sought after commodity, and that we were creditworthy, which made you feel good. You feel quite important when they take such an interest in you.
Some companies will send maybe 20 packs of direct mail to one individual, so it's bombarding someone with an unsolicited application to borrow large sums of money without necessarily knowing whether they have the ability to repay the debt.
By now, the Jenkins had 4 new cards.
I was horrified to find that we'd got a total debt of about £29,000 with credit cards, and I was absolutely gobsmacked.
It had taken less than 3 years for the Jenkins family to reach a debt crisis.
We've been meeting the minimum payments, but even they added up to somewhere in the region of about £600 or £700 a month, just to keep the credit card companies off your back. It was almost half of my monthly income was being used to service the credit card debts. I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning and it suddenly dawned on me that I'd put the house at risk, and the problems that bankruptcy would incur. And suddenly, you know, I really started to suffer a panic attack. My stomach started to churn. I began to suffer a cold sweat, and I curled up in a ball, you know. And I thought, how do I get out of this? You know, why has it happened? Why have I let it happen? And I felt guilty, and I felt all the emotions associated with sheer terror.
This is Trowbridge, Wiltshire. In January 2005, a local mechanic killed himself with the exhaust fumes from his car. The reasons people take their own lives are complex. What's clear is that 65-year-old Richard Cullen died with over £100,000 of credit card debt.
At the end of this garden was Richard's workshop and garage, and that's where he was found, in the car, in the morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning. He'd come back overnight sometime. My son found his car down the bottom, and we called the police, and he was in the garage.
Richard and Wendy were married for 18 years. They had 8 children from previous marriages. Richard earned roughly £15,000 a year and was another revolver, someone who borrowed heavily and never repaid the debt.
It was really about 2 to 3 months before he died. The telephone was ringing almost sort of maybe 17, 18 times a day sometimes, asking to speak to him. And I used to say, and they would say it was the bank or the credit card, and I'd just give him the message, or if he was in the garden, I would go and give him the phone. And then he started to walk off with the phone. And I said, eventually, why are they calling so often? You must be in trouble. And just before Christmas, he admitted that he was terribly in debt. These are some of the statements I've discovered since Richard died. He owed roughly £135,000 on 22 credit cards. It's absolutely unbelievable. Shocking.
Several lenders had issued more than one credit card to Richard Cullen. The market leader, the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, lent him over £35,000. They had issued him with 4 cards under different brand names: Mint, Tesco Personal Finance and 2 NatWest cards, which together generated the RBS Group over £4,000 in interest and charges in the last 12 months of Richard's life. We took the statements to the whistleblower.
This is one of the worst cases of irresponsible lending that I have ever seen. Customers like Richard Cullen, they are the ideal customer. They hold multiple brands with one institution. In this case, credit cards are pushed all the way to the limit. Throughout his whole payment history, he's only making minimum repayments. He takes cash out. There are no interest-free periods. This is your perfect customer. He spends on the card every single month. He's a regular user.